This is by far the hardest question we have received this far. This question is not only hard, the question is somewhat quite controversial. This gentleman set us on a research path that made us to unravel things that even ourselves we didn't know. Though we are not arrogant to imagine that we know everything. We don't know everything. What we are is we are conversation starters. Our duty is to embark on research and to come with sufficient content that is enough to elicit engagement. So through engagement, we share barbecue of understanding, barbecue of information. That is what we do here at the OD. We are merely conversation starters. To embark on the series of questions, this gentleman asked, what did Joluo practice in relation to faith and spirituality? One, we didn't have faith. We didn't have spirituality. Faith implies that someone is more accepted, more preferred than me. And if I can substitute his strength for my weakness, I will be received the same way he is received. You can go as way back to the three siblings who started the nation. You can go to Oino, you can go to Oiny, you can go to Jok, and you're not going to get substitution. The element of substitution is nowhere in Luo culture. There is no faith. Similarly, there is no spirituality either. Spirituality implies that there is one preferred way of approaching deities. Let's not call them God. Let's just say deities. So there is one preferred way of approaching a deity. The Luo nation is divided into clans. I can tell you for free, there are no two clans that approach their ancestral veneration in the same way. So if we do not have that systemized approach, then similarly as a nation in indigenous times, we did not have spirituality. But does that mean we didn't have a practice of our own? We used to have. Luo nation practiced a lot of supernatural expressions. Supernatural expression is the ability in an individual to shift between nature and form at will. So if an individual is a stone, an individual is a man, this individual at will can shift into a stone, and that individual can shift back to being a man, and at will they can shift to being a lizard or a gecko or even a housefly. There are stories, numerous stories of people who would shift even as way much recent as in the 1900s. So we had a lot of supernatural expressions. Supernatural should not be confused with spiritual. The second question: where does Christianity come in a traditional Luo man? Nowhere. Nowhere. As far as the nation is concerned, Christianity only touched base when the white man visited our shore. We would also wish to imagine that when the Queen of Sheba visited Ethiopia, through that it trickled to Luo nation. There is no proof anywhere. There is no evidence of that. So the Luo nation in Kenya only interacted with Christianity when the white man visited our shores. So to that extent, there is no point of convergence between the indigenous Luo man and Christianity. You cannot find evidence of any in Luo history. The third question: What did the Luo people believe when it comes to spirituality? The Luo people practice supernatural expressions. One aspect of supernatural expression is what it's called as ancestral veneration, the homage of the ancestors. The Luo nation, in context, is between two unknowns. The Luo nation is between the unknown past and the unknown to come, or the unknown future. The only way we connect with the unknown past is when from the past they give us one of their own in the form of a child. That is why when we go back to a video that we did about naming systems, we say that one of the naming system in the Luo culture is Juogi. Juogi is one of the practices that connects the Luo in our existence with the two unknowns, the two peripheries. The two peripheries are the unknown past. The only way ancestors from the unknown past can touch and can connect with us is when the ancestors give us their own through childbirth. The only way someone can go to the unknown future is when that person crosses the great divide in death. So Juogi is a very huge part of Luo traditional practice. That is why in Luo we say Juogi Luo ok gol. Juogi Luo idhimo. Dhimo means to appease. What that phrase means, you do not exorcise ancestral spirits. Ancestral spirits are only appeased. They are appeased. And so that is what largely we practice. We practice ancestral veneration. That does not mean that we did not have competing deities. There are a lot of stories in Luo Nation about deities. One of the most interesting that we came up with, I told you this content is going to be quite controversial, is the space of Nyasai. Have you ever come across a phrase called Nyasai Manyako? Nyasai Madako. Have you ever come across that phrase? The name Nyasai in etymology has no meaning. The name Nyasai on its own face value has no meaning. So that means, could it be that the name Nyasai is actually a compound name? Could it be that this name is made up of different names that are crushed into one? That is one of those things that it's quite interesting whenever you're coming to understand deities. We used to have deities, but there was no specific way of approaching either deity. To that extent, the closest that we had in expressing ourselves to deities was through Juogi. There are two types of Juogi. There is Juogi Maber, Juogi Marat. Juogi Marat, these were the mediums, diviners, witches, sorcerers. These were the Juogi Marat. Juogi Maber, these were how the Juogi and the expression and the practice around Juogi was meant for the good of the community, for the good of the society. So that is as far as we go. So the name Nyasai, the name Nyasai implies a being that is appeased as a woman. Nyasai. Nyasai. That name is built up of two different words. Nyar Sayo. Sayo. So that means Nyako Misayo. Nyako Misayo. So we attached that name to a being that we imagined was larger. A being that the ancestors communicated with to bring us rain. a being that our ancestors communicated with to keep us safe, a being that our ancestors communicated with to help us with our harvest, to keep us from and to give us new continuity for the clan. That being, Nyarsayo, was Isaye Kanyako. He's appeased as a lady. That is why in Luo nation you will come across that phrase, Nyasaye Manyako. Nyasaye Manyako. It's very interesting. Did the Luo have unified religious text? No, we didn't. No, we didn't. The space of knowledge and understanding was in a system of transmitting information. One of the many ways we transmitted information were through stories. We used to give a lot of stories. We used to capture teachings. We used to capture knowledge in form of riddles. We used to capture knowledge in form of sayings, in proverbs, in similes. And so that is one of the ways that, and this one was done largely through word of mouth. We would just transmit them through. We didn't learn to write. Writing, I have tried to go as way back as possible in my engagements with people and our networks. We have tried to go as way back. We cannot find proof that the Luo people used to write. There is no proof anywhere. So we didn't have writing as a system of transmitting information. The only way we transmitted information was through storytelling. Through storytelling. It's very important that even as we look at our traditional setup, it is important to understand that there was that room for deity. We approached deities from two angles. We approached deities from a point of, when we've sold the sunshine, we knew there is a being that has opened us up. That is why in Luo, when you want to greet someone in the morning, you say, Oyaore, Oyaore. Oyaore means it has opened. It has dawned. And the dawning was from the sun. And we knew that that image, that being that was superintending over everything, that being was so generous that koyao obiroime. That is why evening in Dholuo is oimore. It has set. The day has set. The sun has set. We didn't worship the sun. No, we didn't worship the sun. We didn't worship the moon either. The sun and the moon were two of the creatures that we felt the connection between that being that we didn't know. So the way we responded to that being through nature was through his generosity to us. Did he keep us safe from foreign aggression? Did he keep us safe from calamity? Did he keep us safe from famine? Did he keep us safe? Did he provide us with rain? Did we have harvest? Did we keep... So that is how we connected with that being. The other way how we connected with that being was through institutions of people we called Jodolo. From where we get the English, the Swahili word, the word today that is in common use, Jodolo. Back then, when someone would bring an offering, a sacrifice, someone would bring a live animal. We didn't have knives. We didn't have swords back then. What we would do is, there was this individual that had a masculinity about them, and they would dolo the neck of this creature until it dies. That is what it's called, Jodolo. Today, we call pastors and priests Jodolo, but nowadays there is nothing they dolo. The name dolo simply means to turn to twist the neck of an animal until it dies. That because we would provide sacrifices when they were alive. Back then, there were no knives. So how would you offer that sacrifice? You would twist the neck till it dies, till it breaks. When the neck breaks, then you would take sharp sticks, and the sharp sticks you would make incision. That is how we would do it. It's important that sometimes when you want to appreciate language, when you want to appreciate a name, a word, try and look at what is the etymology of that word. How did that word come to exist? Does that word bear its own meaning, or does that word have a meaning in the context around it? That is very important, and it's important that we approach it from that angle. This question is very important. We might not have had Christianity. We might not have had the Bible. We might not have had the systems of religion, because we didn't have religion. We didn't have religion. Religions, what we call as African traditional religions, only emerged after Christianity, after Islam. They only emerged as competing religions, competing practices. A typical example would be how Lejo emerged. The founder of Lejo, I don't know if most people know this, but the founder of Lejo was actually a catechist, a Roman Catholic catechist. But that gentleman had a lot of conflicts with the established order in the Catholic faith, and so he was, what do we call it? He was excommunicated from the church, and he set up Legio Maria. Legio Maria is actually the reverse of Catholic Church. So it's important that even as we go and to understand and to study and to have conversations around these cultural practices, indigenous cultural practices, it's quite important to look at how did it come? And a huge part of that is to appreciate etymology, to appreciate how words feel, because words in themselves can teach you something. We might not have books, we might not have elders to go back to, but a word on its own can actually teach you its origin, its beginning, and how it emerged. That is how I would respond to these questions that this gentleman asked, because these questions are very important in us understanding and appreciating our cultural expressions. Let me repeat one thing. There is no culture that is bad. There is no culture that is good. Culture is merely a signpost. This signpost is to inform your destiny. What you derive from that signpost and what you derive from that cultural expression and that cultural experience is what we will call heritage. Heritage is what an individual derives from culture, what an individual derives from an expression. That is what I would attend to this question. The Luo people had their own ways of identifying and connecting with deities, and I hope you found value. If you found value, I will really appreciate a like, a follow, a share, and a comment. Dodi. Making learning language simpler.